as far as Land's End. They were going to land all right, no doubt about that.
It was a very tense time because, I mean, we were not really trained soldiers.
Waiting was the biggest thing that night, waiting.
Nobody knew if it was going to happen. You know, to be standing here and walking to and fro, and any minute you might see boats coming in to the shore, etc. It was a bit daunting, really.
Well, I think the main thing was going through my mind, and through most people's minds, was, how will I come out of it? How am I going to feel? If I got a chance to put a bullet through a German, should I do it?
If the Germans had come, I don't think I should be standing here, because we would have... The ammunition that we had, and even if we killed somebody with every bullet we had, there was no way could we stem a flow of soldiers.
The agonizing wait went on throughout the night.
When morning broke, there was great sighs of relief. Nothing had happened, and we were all thankful for it. I haven't been here since. This is the first time since that night.
This little brown bird began to sing. That's the lark, of course. See? And then we heard something else, and then it was daylight. The company man came up, he said, "Okay, boys, stand down." Whew. We didn't have sweat that night.
The false alarm revealed an ill-equipped band, but in a high state of readiness. Throughout the war, the Home Guard stood alert to leap to the nation's defence. Their battlefield would have been the towns and villages of Britain, their last line of defence, their homes and villages.
And now the war is over, and we shall march no more, but in the club we want to keep an ever open door to all those who in the grim dark days marched side by side, were pals always, prepared to fight for England, to keep old England free.
Next week, one of the great untold stories of the war. While the Home Guard was being licked into shape, Britain embarked on the largest building scheme ever undertaken in its history. But the evidence of this remarkable story is rapidly disappearing and almost forgotten. Now, archaeologist Francis Pryor uncovers the remnants of these defences, revealing a picture of Britain that has lain hidden for over 60 years. And ultimately he discovers whether these defences would have worked by putting to the test Hitler's original plans to invade Britain.
The Nick Broomfield season continues on More 4 with Eileen, the life and death of a serial killer. That's tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
We think of Britain as a country far removed from war, but in 1940 it was transformed into a bristling fortress. The true extent of the scale of these defences has been brought to light by a vast new survey. The Defence of Britain project recorded nearly 20,000 military sites across the country. The painstaking research was organised by the Council for British Archaeology. Francis Pryor, its president, has been investigating just what it has revealed and gives us a guided tour of these remarkable ruins.
These concrete tank traps are a mere 65 years old, so why am I, an archaeologist, so interested in them? Well, for me, they mattered just as much as a medieval castle or an Iron Age hill fort, because they were put here as a desperate measure to retain our freedom. In certain respects, we know more about, say, Roman fortifications than we do about these defences that played such a crucial role in deterring the Nazis, surely the most loathsome of enemies.
Spring 1940. The German forces swept through Europe. The question on everyone's lips was how to halt their charge. The French had constructed a vast line of fortifications along its border with Germany. It was known as the Maginot Line and was the most sophisticated network of defences ever seen. It was thought to be impregnable. But on the 10th of May, the Nazis simply outflanked the entire line and drove into the heart of northern France.
When the Germans bypassed the Maginot Line and the whole thing fell, we knew we were vulnerable. And so at that period, everything was done to prepare for an invasion.
The British thought that the invasion could come practically anywhere. All of Britain was a potential front line. The Germans might come in England itself, but they also might land in Scotland, perhaps even in Ireland. But the main expectation, rightly so, was that the invasion would come somewhere in the southeast.
This leaflet came through our letterbox. If the invader comes, what to do and how to do it. The Germans threatened to invade Great Britain. Hitler's invasions of Poland, Holland and Belgium were greatly helped by the fact that the civilian population was taken by surprise. If the Germans come by parachute, aeroplane or ship, you must remain where you are. The order is stay put.
Blocking the German advance stood the British Army and a new volunteer force, the Home Guard.
Halt! In the course of your duty, you may have the luck to come in contact with the enemy. If you do, your motto is, kill the Boche!
This citizens' army has become part of British folklore. Against all the odds, old men and young boys prepared to take on Hitler's battle-hardened armies.
You're prepared to die for your country, that's it. I mean, they weren't going to have everybody country, I mean, that's it.
That's it.
No way.
Oh, no. But it would need more than a volunteer army. To withstand the might of Nazi Germany, the country had to be fortified. Britain couldn't afford to make the same mistake as the French had with the Maginot Line, so it would require more than one line of defence.
This pillbox is a tiny fragment of a defensive system that once covered huge tracts of coastal and inland Britain. It was the largest defensive system ever constructed in this country, and it involved a truly staggering amount of effort. These tantalizing fragments raise the question, just what were our plans to defend Britain against invasion?
The desperate retreat of the British Army at Dunkirk left the Germans poised on the other side of the Channel. The very next day, a new commander was charged with the task of defending Britain, a towering former rugby international and World War I veteran, General Tiny Ironside. Vast swathes of beaches lay totally exposed and unprotected, each one of them a potential landing zone for a Nazi armada. So Ironside's first step was to construct a coastal crust, an unbroken wall of defences that wrapped around 400 miles of Britain's most exposed shores. The task was immense. A building project on an unprecedented scale was set in motion.
That was terribly hard work. It was all shovel and wheelbarrowing, and it was very, very hard work. Thankfully, in those days, I was a young, strong man, and I could stand it.
As a 17-year-old, John Green was one of the thousands of men employed to fortify Britain. His quota was to build 2 concrete anti-tank cubes a day.
We worked all through that spring and summer, and I helped to build all these concrete anti-tank blocks, they were called, and they each weigh 13 tons.
The concrete cubes formed an impassable wall against tanks, but to block the entire front, they would have to stretch twice the length of the Maginot Line. The beaches of Britain would become unrecognisable. For the first time ever, the full extent of these remains have been exposed. They paint an intriguing picture of wartime Britain.
hands above to lean on. Would it be good leaning to call our hands above to lean on? Would it be
I'm angry with my mum for doing this. I know that she didn't ask for cancer, and she doesn't deserve it. But if she hadn't have smoked, we wouldn't have to be doing this.
More than anything, I feel like I've let my children down. It's the gamble. I took it and I've lost.
For help giving up, call 0800 169 0169.
If you need careers advice that's tailored to fit you, call the Learn Direct advice line.
Hello, is that Learn Direct?
Yes, it is. How can I help you?
We can now help you with things like improving your CV or preparing for an interview.
Good luck with your new job.
So you can make the most of your skills. For careers advice, call 0800 100 900.
Simple pleasures in life are a gift. Visa. Love every day.
Yeah, so Power Gen are cheaper than... Actually, it's bad karma to say it out loud.
Cheaper than British Bus?
Positive energy from Power Gen.
That was me a few months ago at my local NHS Stop Smoking service. It's a free service run by trained professionals who give you a goal to work towards. Yes! For me, getting a step-by-step program from experts was a lot better than quitting on my own.
For details of your local service, call 0800 169 0169.
These days, you don't have to be posh to join a posh golf club.
Morning.
Hi. And you don't have to be posh to be privileged. All you need is... What? Took the word right out of my mouth. 4 years no claims on your car insurance. Sorry, Righty. That's what Privilege likes. Good drivers. If you've got 4 years no claims, call Privilege now or buy online at privilege.com.
If you want to know the world's greatest actor,
the supreme master of his art, sublime,
you ask the experts.
Oh, God! A camera can see a good actor thinking. He changed my life.
The finest performers as judged by their fellow thespians. The world's greatest actor, Sunday at 9 on 4.
"65 years ago, a huge line of anti-invasion fortifications ringed Britain's coastline. Hundreds of miles of exposed beaches were transformed by a mass of barbed wire, concrete blocks and landmines. Most of these defences have long since been dismantled, destroyed or eroded, but at Spurn Point in Yorkshire, they are extraordinarily preserved.
Now, you might wonder why anyone would bother to defend this bleak and windswept place, but the answer lies out there. That's the Humber estuary. You've got the ports of Grimsby and Hull nearby, and if you'd been here about 1,000 years ago, you'd have seen a fleet of Viking longships sailing into the heart of England unopposed. Now, that's why this has always been a strategically important place. Then in 1940, they constructed one of the most elaborate defensive systems of anywhere in England. Here is a glimpse of some of the massive defences that transformed the coastline of Britain. This huge piece of concrete is actually tipped over, but it was the base of a 9.2-inch gun, which was fixed on these threaded bars you can see here. This is the floor, and then the gun barrel was up here 10 feet above me, and it projected 60 feet out there. It was capable of lobbing shells 10 miles to take out battleships on the horizon. It could also turn around, point inland, and if any invaders had got in and were heading towards Hull or towards Spurn Head, bang, this thing took them out. Oh. This boulder clay is absolute murder to dig. But that's what they had to do to construct this thing. It was entirely built by hand. And the reason we know that is over here. The concrete here was poured directly onto the clay. And you can tell that because, look, you can see the spade marks left in the clay. So there was an enormous amount of labour went into the construction of this thing. But the ironic bit is that despite all the labour, all the effort, this gun was never fired in anger.
Spurn Head conceals a mass of fortification above and below ground. Pillboxes formed the spine of these defences. The squat concrete bunkers provided excellent cover from enemy fire, and over 18,000 were built in the summer of 1940 alone. Most pillboxes didn't have underground passages leading to them, but these tunnels provided a storage place for arms and gave secret access to the nerve centre, the pillboxes that guarded the beach.
Those big guns needed defending, and there's something we come across in archaeology. It's called defence in depth, and it means you have layers of defensive measures, and the outer layer here was provided by these pillboxes, and there are a whole series of them around Spurn Head, and they're laid out so that the rifles and machine guns can fire along the beach, and you've got a great arc of fire here.
At the height of Britain's building drive, a pillbox was completed every 20 minutes. Camouflage was their most effective protection, and they were often ingeniously and eccentrically disguised. At Spurn Head, if an invasion force managed to break through the first line of beach defences, it would immediately confront another imposing obstacle.
This is one of two anti-tank ditches, and it was very carefully constructed. The side of the ditch there was made steeper so that tanks would slither down, and then this was all dug out by hand, and when they got to the bottom, wallop, they hit this, and nothing was going to get past that. And if you look at the side here, as an archaeologist, I say, whoa, I know what's going on there. That's where one tip load of concrete comes up against another one, so you can actually see how they built it. Now, bear in mind, this is 1940. They're in a frantic rush to get defences made, so they don't bother about giving this any sort of finish. They just do it.
The scale of the defences was breathtaking, but the speed at which they were built made it all the more remarkable.
Dunkirk had been and gone. The Low Countries had all been captured, France had been captured, and we didn't know what was going to happen. No one in the country knew whether we were going to be invaded or whether we weren't. And that was the urgency. We had to try and keep Jerry out somehow.
Mile upon mile of tranquil beaches were transformed into battlefields. Bristling hedges of scaffolds stopped boats from landing. Thick reams of barbed wire entangled advancing infantry, and concrete cubes blocked the path of tanks. Then minefields were thickly sown across the open ground. But it was not just Britain's open beaches that had to be fortified. At Newhaven on the south coast, the cliffs are riddled by a network of tunnels built in the 1800s.
Any way through the White Cliffs was a potential source of weakness. And that's why throughout the war there was a British Army officer stood at the top of these stairs with a barrel of petrol at his feet, and at the first sign of the Wehrmacht coming up, he'd roll the barrel forward, bang, 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 down it would go, in would go a hand grenade, whoomph, and the whole thing would come crashing down. these were truly formidable defences, and any force attacking them was going to take massive casualties. But there was another side to it. The chaps who were defending here, they were professional soldiers. They knew they were cut off. They knew there was no retreat, but they were prepared to buy precious time with their lives. The point of the whole thing was to cause delay.
The coastal crust was just the first layer of the anti-invasion defences. Any invader that fought their way inland would soon have to tackle another set of obstacles. Eric Higgs was in the Cornish Home Guard. His job was to set up a roadblock on one of the main routes through Cornwall.
We came down here, and the first thing we had to do, we had 10 feet lengths of railway line, and these had to be slotted into concrete slots in the road surface, about every 2 feet, and alternated in 2 lines. Then we had to bring down huge sewer pipes, concrete sewer pipes, about 3 foot or 3'6" maybe in diameter, full of concrete, and you had iron bars, and about 5 men could roll these big bolts of concrete down to the roadblock behind the Dragon's Teeth. So you then had the Dragon's Teeth first, then these huge blocks of concrete. But the roadblocks stopped the enemy, and while they were deciding what to do or trying to do, we were going to take advantage of it. That was the plan.
August 1940, the Battle of Britain raged overhead. Wave after wave of German aircraft streamed across the Channel. Their aim, to win total air superiority over southern England and destroy the RAF. Victory over the RAF was essential if the Germans were to mount an invasion on Britain. Now, the whole country had to be prepared for a new threat: German paratroopers.
We were here, and I always volunteered for the dawn watch as being the most likely time that invading troops would come. And armed with binoculars, one could scan the heavens and all around, and I must confess now that my feelings were half hopeful and half fearful.
I always thought to myself, well, what the hell was going to happen when they do come down, like, and I was looking up in the air and looking to see what we were going to do. I'd got my rifle and I'd got me bayonet at the end as well.
And I was sent out with my pike and told to be ready to bayonet paratroopers, and they might arrive, they said, disguised as nuns. Thank God I never met a nun when I was 17 with a pike, because I'd have polished her off in a minute. But it was deadly serious.
Every possible landing ground for the Germans had to be defended. In the heart of rural Wales lay RAF Carew Cheriton. It appears to be a sleepy backwater, but its green fields conceal a mass of fortifications. Defensive planners realized there was an Achilles heel in their defenses: their own airfields.
These heavy-duty pillboxes on the periphery of the airfield are not facing outwards, the direction you'd expect, because that's where an attacking force would come, but inwards over the airfield itself. The reason for this is that it was fully expected that the Germans would actually land over there. And when that happened, these things would open up and the airfield would become a killing field. This is the Battle HQ. It was the nerve centre of defensive operations and positioned on high land so that from this observation slot here, you could see the entire airfield. Below ground, and unfortunately flooded so I can't get in them, are 5 rooms with radios and telephones that were linked to the 7 pillboxes and numerous trenches that encircled the airfield, so that if anyone did attack, this place was a death trap. Every airfield was a potential target to the German bombers, and some took an absolute pounding, especially in the summer of 1940. So in an effort to relieve pressure, an elaborate scheme of fake or decoy airfields was put into operation.
The man charged with the task of deceiving the German bombers was a retired RAF officer, Colonel John Turner. He quickly enlisted the help of men who were well versed in the art of deception, set designers from the film studios at Shepperton. They formed a new top-secret unit known simply as Colonel Turner's Department. Their task was to lure German bombers away from real targets. Work started on over 500 decoy sites, which included replica Spitfires dotted along fake runways, and inflatable tanks and lorries. Baskets were filled with wood and drenched with fuel. At night, these were set alight, and from the air appeared to be blazing cities. German bomber crews assumed that these were targets that had already been pinpointed, so they too unleashed their bombs into the flames. But one of the most cunning plans was to pretend to be a taxiing Spitfire at night. It required just 2 men wobbling a high-powered torch in an empty field. Ron Barton was one of these masters of deception. His job was to convince the Luftwaffe to bomb him, and not the real airfields.
What was the purpose of this decoy stuff with the light?
This is the light that attracts the hostile pilots to the site.
So you were acting a plane?
Yes, I've acted many things. Initially, you must keep it in line, parallel with the runway.
Okay.
Imagine the plane coming down, it's taxiing, it gets to the end of the runway, and then the light goes off.
But I noticed while you were doing that, Ron, the light was jiggling.
If the light was dead straight, they would know that it was a fixed light. The point is that the dispersal points were never perfectly level, so that the light would bounce as such with the movement of the plane.
And that looks convincing from the air, does it?
Apparently so.
The decoy sites were remarkably effective. Over half of all nighttime bombing raids aimed at RAF airfields failed, and the bombs fell on empty fields. But Britain would embark on a new phase of anti-invasion defences, built on an even